Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming, and this question came via my Patreon rather than from my website. And I do need to say thank you, by the way, to everyone right now who has been supporting my Patreon. New patrons, I am very grateful to you. Over the last few weeks, since I talked about it a little more, I always feel a little apprehension speaking about Patreon because I know it rubs some people the wrong way. But the turnout of people who watch this channel, who headed over to patreon.com/Matthew Dawkins, and even pledging at a low tier, that is still support. This industry that I'm in, this gaming industry, it's very mercurial. Making a full-time income from it is tricky at best. But it helps so much when you've got people supporting you via this other method. And you back at a certain level, you get into my Discord, you can ask me questions whenever you like, you can interact with all the players who play my games, and if you back at the right tier, you can play in those games as well. And we run games every month. You're put in a group that suits you, you get to play games you enjoy, and so on. And of course, I get to run them for you. So I want to say thank you so much to everyone who's been supporting me on that. These videos, I think, have made a big difference, but it's making a massive difference to me that you folks are giving me the support that you can. So this question came from one of those new patrons, and the question was, if you could have access to any video game license, what RPG would you make of a video game, or words to that effect? And the word license there is, of course, operative, because you wouldn't make, or I wouldn't make, an RPG about a game as, let's say, a fan-made product without the authority, without the permission to do so. I remember when a Mass Effect RPG was very near release. It may have even come out, and it was even being discussed at Gen Con for awards. And it was an unofficial Mass Effect RPG. The license had never been given to them, and I think they were planning on making a profit from it. So the legal team got involved and said, no, you can't do that. You can't make a Mass Effect RPG without the license. So yeah, that got shelved. I don't know if the ideas got repurposed for something else. But that isn't one I worked on. Many, many years ago, I worked on a BioShock RPG. I worked on a BioShock RPG with a YouTuber whose username was Dizardis, and he was a lovely guy. I really got on with him. I do hope he's well. I don't know where he is anymore these days, but I remember he was a creative powerhouse, and we had lots of meetings when Google Meet, I think Google Hangouts, we may have met through Skype, to be honest, was in its infancy, and shared so many fantastic ideas. And I ended up picking up the ball with that and converting Vampire the Requiem First Edition rules into BioShock. I might throw some images up on the screen for things I made, because I ran this game for my local gaming group. We ran a pretty lengthy chronicle of BioShock, and this was before I was into writing RPGs for a living, of course. So yeah, I did make fan-made RPGs without a license until I eventually got a cease and desist. Yes, I suppose it's a mark of fame. I got a cease and desist. I can't remember if it was from 2K or Irrational Games. It was from one or the other. But it was a very kindly worded letter that said, your YouTube videos are basically giving the impression that you are making a BioShock RPG, and we can't allow that. Thanks very much. This was after I had asked them if they would basically grant me the license. In my immaturity, I thought, yeah, they'll just give it to some 20-something-year-old cretin on YouTube. And unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. So that project stopped where it started, more or less. Anyway, so BioShock wouldn't be it. I think I've moved on a little since BioShock, and as much as I still love the ideas behind BioShock, I would want to try something else. On the Onyx Pathcast, I often mentioned that I would love to make a Metal Gear-based RPG. And if I was just using an existing system for that, I would probably use Godlike, or the One Roll engine. because I always saw like the members of Foxhound in Metal Gear Solid, you know, your Liquid Snakes, Revolver Ocelots, Sniper Wolves, Vulcan Raven, Psycho Mantises, and so forth, as being talents, which is the superhero type in Godlike, and wild talents, of course, and the powers that they possessed being quite in keeping with a lot of the powers that existed within the game. In Godlike, you can hyper activate some of your attributes and your skills, so you can, like, say, be a hyper sniper. You could have lots of hard dice, so automatic tens in rifle in particular, become a hyper sniper. Or you could even be like Vamp, and you could, in Metal Gear Solid 2, and you could run across water and resurrect. I mean, the negatives, the flaws you'd have to take with that to really buy such abilities would be interesting. But there are also miracles in that game, and this was what would work for a character like Psycho Mantis. Now, in Godlike, there is no actual mind control from memory that you can, I think you can create illusions, but there is no mass hypnotism or telepathy ability. So you'd have to create that for a character like Psycho Mantis or a different psychic character. But I love the idea of having a Metal Gear RPG set around the era of Outer Heaven. So Big Boss, or Venom Snake, is in control of Outer Heaven, this mercenary nation, and he deploys his mercenaries like a PMC to various battlefields around the world to the highest bidder. And you, as a character, can be a mercenary for Outer Heaven, which is basically you as a member of the, I guess, Rogue Foxhound or Outer Heaven Mercs, have your various abilities, and you put them to use on the battlefield in covert operations, assassinations, sabotage, information gathering, working with resistance operations to take down governments, and so forth. That all appealed to me massively, and it still does. I still think Metal Gear as a universe, as even, not just looking at that sort of late 80s, early 90s era of Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 with Outer Heaven and Zanzibar, I think you could equally look at one of the sprawling environments in Metal Gear Solid 4, for example. I ran a game of Godlike many, many years ago, which was based in part, well, at least the NPCs were based in part around the Cobra unit. So the antagonists were the Cobras from Metal Gear Solid 3. So you had the fear, the pain, the fury, the sorrow, the end, and the joy as talents who had gone rogue. They were on your side, and then during the battle that you fight in your first couple of sessions, they turn on you, and then all of a sudden it becomes apparent that they're in fact working for the Soviets, or they're working for whoever, and now you're going to have to fight the people that either trained you or who you were friends with until recently, and so on. And I think you can very easily match, I mentioned, of course, the talent abilities. You can very easily layer them over characters in Metal Gear. But I think where Metal Gear is at its strongest is the richness of the universe. It has, of course, a very strong political message, and I like a game with a message. It doesn't necessarily need to be rammed down my throat, but I think it has a message that well suits the universe of Metal Gear. And an RPG with a message like that, it adds structure to the world. It gives your characters something to be fighting within or against. So yeah, I really like Metal Gear, and if I was to choose some runner-ups, because when I played Hollow Knight for the first time, my thinking was, wow, this universe, Hallow Nest, would be such a great place for an RPG, and so I created The World Below because I love the subterranean fantasy of it, so I don't need to do Hollow Knight at this point. Other games I would turn into RPGs. I've heard a lot of people say they'd love to see a Disco Elysium TTRPG. I don't think that's going to happen now based on the current state of the company behind it. And I don't know. I think you can take some of what makes Disco Elysium great, but I don't think you could immediately turn it into a TTRPG, because I think what makes it great is its video game atmosphere, the writing, the universe is what's interesting. But could other writers, could GMs and players do the same quality of gameplay at the table as exists in the Disco Elysium RPG? That's a good question. I mean, I guess so, because we play our Baldur's Gates and our Planescape Torments and so on, and we still go ahead and play tabletop role-playing games. We're not measuring ourselves against them. I suppose I would want to see the world, the Elysium of Disco Elysium, expanded a little more, defined a little more, before I would feel comfortable making an RPG about it. Another property quite tied to Nintendo, this one, would be Metroid. I've always been a massive fan of Metroid. Metroid and Castlevania, there you go, there's a couple of options. Castlevania would be a fantastic one to explore, though Stokerverse kind of does something similar. Damn it! But Metroid, I haven't seen many RPGs covering. And maybe that's because Metroid is a single player experience. So you just have Samus, or Samus if you prefer, Samus Aran, our protagonist in the Metroid games. And yeah, the plots in the vast majority of Metroids are pretty much the same. You crash land on a planet and you have to work your way to the center, where Mother Brain or Ridley or some other dastardly alien creature is trying to apply Metroids to people to either control them or mutate them or metamorphosize them, as in Metroid Dread, with your X-parasites and so forth. But what I really like about Metroid is its, well, color palette. It has wonderfully interesting universes, or planets, and monsters within them. I think you could easily adapt a great deal of what is presented about the state of the universe in Metroid, with its space pirates and with its various galactic agencies and the planets that are introduced, in the same way as you could with the Alien RPG. I think you would want a bespoke system for it, because an awful lot of Metroid is about upgrading your character in the course of play. You are essentially deployed with very little in the way of equipment, and by the end of it, you are a Goliath in some god-awful purple Varia suit that allows you to plunge into lava without a concern, or sub-zero freezing environments. That would be a lot of fun. What would be interesting in a Metroid RPG is seeing how you could vary the character types, so that you're not all just faceless goons wandering around with arm cannons in various suits. But I would love to give it a go. I would love to explore Metroid in the style of the Alien RPG, where steadily the world is becoming more alien, it is becoming more threatening, and the lights are diminishing around you, and you are the only people who can basically fight your way, blast your way out of it. That would be exciting. So yeah, let's say Metal Gear and Metroid, two M's. And what I want to know is, which video games would you turn into an RPG, and not just which ones would you do. Tell me some of your ideas behind how you would do it, why you're choosing that game. What would the player options be? What inspires you? It's not enough to just say, I love The Legend of Zelda. What makes Hyrule an interesting setting to run a game in? What would your characters be? And I've got some answers for that, because I'm a big fan of Hyrule Warriors, and I love how the various secondary characters have been magnified, especially in games like Tears of the Kingdom. But I want you to tell me. I want you to give me an answer. So I look forward to reading your comments. Thank you very much for watching.